The whole idea behind this was to fill raised bed gardens with as little money as possible. Throughout the middle of the video, you're gonna see some things that did not go as planned. And at the end, you're gonna see our updated change that we had to divert to. Hey lovely people, welcome back to the lovely place. We're at our house and we are planting gardens. I'm gonna tell you in just a few minutes why we are using cedar logs to go in the bottom of our raised garden bed versus a typical kind of branch or log that breaks down quickly. As you guys know, cedar lasts a long time and it doesn't break down much. Well, we're putting it in the bottom of our raised bed along with leaves and a lot of other things. We'll show you everything we're doing. And one of the reasons we're doing this is because we purchased 2 feet tall walls garden beds because we don't like bending over if we don't have to. Plus we had a slope of a hill that we had to install it on. There's a video where we put it all together and we installed it and we had to dig in. And so when we dug in, we buried about 7 to 8 inches on one side. So that decreased the height of it. But there's no sense in using good soil in that whole 2-foot section because you just don't need that much for most vegetables that you're gonna grow. Now it's time to get started. I wanna show you what Mrs. Lovely's already done while I was bringing all this back here. She has taken these garden beds, and by the way, these are the Land Guard 8 foot long by 4 feet across and 2 feet tall garden beds. We really like them so far. We're excited about these. They are definitely an upgrade to our backyard garden. We've used just items, you know, that we've just made work. There's an old pond that you can put in the ground. We bought it years ago. We never used it. And when we started growing things, we were just desperate, like what can we use? And then we bought these grow bags and we've rearranged them a little bit. We've got a natural incline or drainage ditch basically that comes down through the property, and so it comes down through here when it storms and rains. So we put these pallets across this in hopes that the water will drain underneath. And I tell you, if you guys haven't seen them yet, there's the cicadas. They're leaving their little shells everywhere. We've got them all over the place. There's no bug in here, it's just a shell. I'll show you a bunch on this fence line here. Gosh, this is worth seeing. I'm sorry, I'm not wasting your time. This is insane. Never seen it like this before. I guess that's one that's recently come out of its deal. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, she's just filled it full of cardboard, you know, just to prevent weeds from coming up, and also to hopefully help. We've got a little bit of space right here where it didn't go down to the ground completely. Hopefully to pack it in when we put everything in here, so that we don't lose a lot of soil. So as you can see here, we've got some cedar that's been laying around for a little while. And I know that most people would probably not use cedar in the bottom of a garden bed, but I'm gonna tell you why we're doing it. I'm also gonna tell you why we're not filling this raised bed up with raised bed garden soil that you can buy at the store. Instead, we're using a combination of topsoil and compost and manure. We'll get into all that in a few minutes, but let's fill this up.
It's getting filled up with wood, and then we can put all the compost and soil on top of it. It looks like it's going to make it easier for me working in the garden because I don't have to lean down as much. It'll also soak up some water and help to keep things hydrated.
won't turn off. Okay, some of this wood may not be cedar, but most of it is. And what we're doing may or may not be the right thing to do. I will tell you that we did read up on what, and there goes our water hose. Okay, so we had a water hose malfunction. We're gonna have to get another one and put there. That one's a little old and worn out. As I was saying, we read up on what woods are safe or not safe. And I didn't find anything that said that cedar was not safe to put in a raised garden bed. But I did read that black or dark walnut, it said, is not, because it puts off, what is it called? I don't know, tannins maybe?
Yeah, it puts off tannins and oils that are toxic.
So the fact that I didn't see anything about cedar, I was still not completely, and I'm still not 100% convinced, but what I am convinced of is that this cedar is old. It's been stacked up back there for at least 5 years, I would say, at least. And so it doesn't even really have a cedar smell at all right now, which means it's probably putting off a whole lot less of whatever it would have put off to begin with. I know that most people put wood in the bottom of a raised bed so that it can disintegrate, it can degrade, and it can turn into soil, right? Well, that's wonderful, and I would have done that if I had had other wood stacked up back here, but this is what I had. And as a homesteader or a thrifty person, you hope you don't make a mistake by using what you have, but you use what you have as long as you can't find 100% proof that there's going to be an issue with it, or some proof, sorry, if you can't find some proof. And I haven't. Now, in the comments, if some of you know about this, I don't know if I want you to tell me or not, but please tell everybody, because once we do this, this is done. So we'll cross our fingers, hope and pray that everything grows and it does well in here. I'll tell you the bigger thing that we're worried about right now, and that's over here. We purchased this Countryside compost and manure, and it really has a strong odor to it. So Mrs. Lovely's going to get her pH tester, and she's going to test these bags as we put them down, or before we put them down, and see if the pH, according to a little research, the pH should be between 6 and 8. So neutral 7, and likes it to be at a close to neutral balance if possible. The good side of this is we're actually going to take topsoil, it's also Countryside, and we're going to mix this together. So we will be diluting this compost and manure and mixing it with the topsoil, which will potentially neutralize it a little bit more and make it a little less possible to have problems. Before we do any of that, however, we saved clippings from not just grass, but I believe this was these tall decorative grasses, ornamental grasses, and we put them through a little mulcher, basically like a chipper, and we did the same thing with leaves. So as soon as we get all of the logs into here like we have there, we're going to wet this one down as well. Then we're going to start piling this mulched up, and this has been setting throughout the entire winter, so it's had a little bit of time to do its own composting, and so have the leaves, and some of the leaves almost look like it's already turning into soil. Then we're going to mix this, put it on it, and see where we get. So I also wanted to say that the fact that wood will decompose and turn into soil is a great thing. However, you're going to always have to add more soil if that happens, or when that happens. With the cedar, it's probably not going to decompose for years and years completely. Again, that's been 5 years, and it's really just taken the outer bark off, and on the ones that were laying on the ground, they decompose somewhat. And you can see some that are worse than others. Some are older than others too. But the good news about this is, if this doesn't cause any harm, then it's not going to sink down as quickly, and we're not going to need to add more soil. Okay, so we got all the logs in, the cardboard, then the logs, and we've wet everything. I'll tell you what, my back is feeling it. This little brace right here is a back saver. So yeah, if you don't have one of these, I recommend getting one. I'll throw a link in the description for this in case you need one. But now what we're going to do, we've talked about it. We think the next step is we're going to put a lot of this loose clippings of the grass, the leaves, just to fill in all the crevices of the wood. And then next we're going to see if we need any more height built up, and if so, we've got a bunch of small twigs and sticks that we'll put on top of that. So let's get going.
I've been looked back my old strong hat, hands in the dirt, ain't nothing wrong with that. Tending tomatoes, pulling up wheat. Life here is simple, tending to my needs. 2 days of robin, sing me a tune. Up in the sky, under the afternoon moon. They swoop and they flutter, keeping me company, while I work in my raised bed, under the maple tree.
Looks better already, doesn't it?
Digging in the sun, feeling lost in break, with the birds flying high. It's a peaceful place.
This looks like hay or straw. But again, it's just ornamental grass clippings.
And those grass clippings have been sitting since last March.
Digging in the sun, feeling lost in break, with the birds flying high. Peaceful place. In my garden path, trouble seems safe. Simple thoughts.
Oh, this is going to save us so much money in topsoil and compost. There's a name to this method of madness. What's the name of it, Mrs. Lovely?
It's called a lasagna bed.
Isn't there something also, hookah something? We'll put it in right here on screen.
Not hookah.
It's German.
It's German.
We are going to use this 3-way meter, and first we're going to test the pH, right?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to just pop it in a bag here. This is alkaline on the left and acidic on the right, and it's close to, it's between a 6 and a 7, I think. No, it's between a 7 and an 8. Check this one. Now that one's a little right there at the 8 level, but we did read as long as it's between a 6 and an 8, we're okay. And what I think is when we mix it with this topsoil, we will probably get it down a little bit lower. Let's see where the topsoil measures out at. Interesting. It's about the same place. So the topsoil is also between the 7 and an 8. Not too bad. A little high in alkaline. And if you're high in alkaline, what you need to do is add, is it lime?
Lime.
So yeah, a little lime go a long way when you've got a little bit high pH, which we could potentially get it down to a 7. Okay, so what else do we want to test on this? You've got the moisture content. It looks like it's the same gauge that shows you everything.
No, you have to turn that little button.
Oh, you have to turn the button. So let's look at moisture. Okay, just curious what the moisture, it's high. It looks like it's reading a 7. I'm not sure what that represents. So it's definitely toward the wet, toward the moist level. I bet you this will be much drier over here at the topsoil. Yeah, we're way down here in the dry level. So again, when we mix these, we should be pretty much dead center. So we'll test that. We'll mix a bag together in this wheelbarrow and we'll see what these readings change to. Let's first open this up compost bag. You can tell this is wet. I mean, it's super, super wet. was pop some topsoil open. Totally dry in comparison. A little experiment here. It's a little bit more wet down toward the bottom. I'm gonna grab a shovel and we're gonna turn. All right, let's just kind of mix it up. It already looks all drier than it did with just the compost and manure.
Yeah, it does.
So,
Looks good.
yeah, it does. So you might ask, why are we using a mixture of compost and manure and topsoil? Well, we're not going to be doing that in our grow bags. In the grow bags, there's just less material altogether, and you've got to be sure that you're nurturing something in that small of a container really well. And so a raised garden bed soil, right, that's pretty much what it's called, is really best for that. And you can make your own by mixing up a few items. When we do that, we'll put another video out. We'll kind of go through everything that you mix if you want to just build your own raised garden bed soil in order to come up with a great soil to do it in a small container. Since we're in a larger, again, 8 by 4 and 2 feet tall, of course, we're only doing 1 foot tall with the soil, approximately, maybe a little more. You have a lot more to work with. And of course, we put the leaves and everything down in the bottom, so it'll continually build nutrients as well. And plus, I saw it on YouTube, so it's got to be true, right? Let's hope so. All right, let's test this and see how this is doing now that we have mixed it up. So right now we've got it on the pH setting, and the pH is still pretty much 7.5, which is about where each of these were independently. Now let's put it over on moisture, and like I said, we're close to being dead center. We're still a little bit on the drier side, which I think I would prefer over wet. We can wet it with just water and not whatever moisture may have been packed into here. Another thing you can do is the sniff test and make sure it doesn't really stink. And this doesn't. This smells. Now, if you grab the compost and manure alone, it did have a bit of a smell of manure, but when you smell this, it smells good. It just smells fresh and no problem at all. I'm liking the way that smells. Plus, you want to see if it clumps up too bad and doesn't break apart too easy. If it clumps, I'm squeezing it really tight, packing it like a snowball. But you can see it's just really falling apart. So if it stayed together like a mud ball, then that would be a bad sign. Just putting a bag on top of each other, kind of mixing them as I go, shoveling them from one side to the next. I don't think we're going to keep this one. That's a clump of
patty
manure. If you find stuff like that, it's not fully composted and you need to get it out. That's not good. But it is a good thing that we're going through it carefully and we're mixing it
Yes.
with topsoil. Not good at all. Looks a lot better when you mix it with this topsoil, no doubt. As far as the concern we have is if the manure, if it's not been composted well enough, if it's not taken enough time to do that, then if it's too high in the manure factor, it can actually burn up the plants and destroy your entire crop. And so that's a very big concern if you're not creating your own compost and you know exactly the timing of it and that you've not tested it. So we're doing all we can do with what we have at this point to try to make sure we're good. I'm curious about something. Come with me. I want to check that big clump of manure for a pH balance. There's the manure, and it doesn't get more manure-y than that. Believe it or not, that's still a 7 to 8, which concerns me. Even though when we checked into a little research, it said a 7 to 8 is what you want. And of course on the moisture side, it's total moisture because it's nothing but manure. It's still brown. Take a look inside.
Wow. Yeah.
I think
that's not broken down.
I think my Boston Terrier got into that.
I think we should put 1 bag of compost to 2 bags of topsoil just to lighten that compost and manure up, and hopefully thin it down so that it's not so strong.
Of course, that's going to make us short on our mixture because I did a 50-50 mixture. But I think you're right.
If we have to, we can take some of that back.
We could take some back, yeah.
Hate to, but sometimes that's what you got to do.
Looking forward to carrying it back up the hill.
But sometimes that's what Mr. Lovely has to do.
That's right. Look, more clumps of this. So, yeah, you might want to take a moisture meter with you when you go to the store. Look at this, guys. And test the moisture level. Just poke the bag while you're still in the big box store, if that's where you're getting it.
Check the pH.
Check the pH, but I think most telling is the moisture level, because if this hasn't composted well and that manure is still clumped up, you're gonna get a very high level of moisture. So let's throw another topsoil on here and let's hope for the best. We're gonna mix all this up with the shovel, real good. You can see how deep this is getting, and we got a long way to go. So there's certainly going to be enough depth with just soil, even though we did all of this layering of materials that we did. Tons of space. All right, we got a lot more to go. Okay, so we've been working for a little while off camera, alternating, 2 bags of topsoil, 1 bag of compost. What we've had to do is dig through the compost, and I want to show you the bag I just dumped. This is an example of what we've been dealing with. Okay, you see this? I hate to show you this on camera. This is the compost and manure that we picked up from a big box store called Countryside, American Countryside. So that's not going in our garden, that's going in the bucket. So I just want to point out to you that what this says it's supposed to be is derived from composted pine fines, composted hardwood fines, and composted, underline, chicken and cow manure. Composted, not clumps. We've got clumps. Okay, so as you can see there, a lot of these clumps do fall apart, but that one's not going to. That's our big bucket of, you know what? More. Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll look at that one in a second. Yeah, that's a big pile. Big pile. I would not purchase the American Countryside compost and manure unless you're just wanting a bunch of manure and some compost kind of all mixed in together, but it's not composted. That's just a fact. Now, we're very worried about putting our plants that Mrs. Lovely has worked on for 3-4 months from seed to ready to plant. We're really concerned. So we're not going to plant today. We're going to continue to fill this bed, which the bed looks awesome. Absolutely no complaints. In fact, one thing I wanted to show you is how nice and flat the sides look. Even though we have all this moisture and weight in there, it's literally just holding very firm, very rigid. And yeah, couldn't be happier about the land guard beds. But this compost and manure mixture, not so much. So we're gonna finish up for the day. We're not gonna do that bed yet with this. I'll probably take every bit of that back and get a different brand, and we'll show you how that brand looks on the next one, okay? Because we're gonna leave this here for the moment. We're gonna finish this out where it stands, add a little bit more topsoil, and of course we're gonna bring that up another few inches at some point soon. But right now we need to be thinking about what's next for us and what we're about to do. Okay, so it's the same afternoon, a little later, a shower later, a new shirt that looks like the same shirt, but it's a new one. And I think Mrs. Lovely and I have determined what we're gonna do related to this bed. So we're probably going to do exactly to this bed what we've done to this one so far using these items. And I'm gonna go purchase some garden soil or raised bed soil and top this off with it, just so that I'm not planting directly into this stuff. As you can see, this is about a good 5-6 inches, so we'll probably come up to about right here. The plants will probably be just touching this stuff, so hopefully we'll be okay. But we're gonna count these and see if we're gonna end up with enough to finish this one out like that. Okay, so it's the next morning, and yesterday afternoon, after we finished our recording, I determined obviously that we needed, you know, some different materials in the upper 6-7 inches of the bed. And so here's what we settled on. We went and purchased composted organic humus. And just so you know, this is derived from composted forest products and or other organic materials. And so this, probably 99.9% sure there is no manure in here. And obviously there could be, I just don't know for sure, but it doesn't say that. And right beside of this pallet full at the big box store was another pallet of this evergreen. And by the way, this is evergreen product. It's not the countryside that we originally started with. It's evergreen, and they had a compost and manure stacked up right beside this organic humus. And for those of you who don't know, join the club what humus was, but I did a little investigating yesterday, and a lot of you probably do know. And it's basically just plant material that has composted, but it's not completely degraded all the way down to fine particles. There's still enough particles in there to absorb moisture and to allow some draining, but it also catches moisture, so it's kind of confusing how it does both, but it does do both apparently. But it's going to hopefully, as I mix it into the tops of these beds, I'm hoping that it's going to sort of neutralize all of the manure a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously the manure, and by the way, when I was going to the store getting all that, Mrs. Lovely finished this bed for us, and what she did here is the same thing we did over there. She did 2 bags of topsoil to 1 bag of this compost manure, and she spent some time digging out the matter, we'll just call it, out of this that was clumped up. And so we did not leave any clumps, at least none that were significant. But now we're going to take the humus and we're going to mix it in with this and fill these things up to the top. We'll add some topsoil with it, and I might put 1 bag of composted manure in there with that potentially as well. We'll kind of see as we go, but time to get started. Okay, so what we're going to do is try to play this smart, get this done fast. So I'm just going to fill up these this bed with about 4 of these, flip them over. So this again is the humus, flip it over that way, I'll just do with each corner like that. Then we'll throw some topsoil and do a little mixing up. Let's take a peek and see how this looks. So it's pretty fine.
Pretty light and fluffy.
Yeah, and as far as the smell, it's fresh. There's no manure-y smell whatsoever. So I like that. They gave me 2 for 1 for these that were busted. They said, you mind if I just give you 2 of these busted ones for every one? And I said, I don't mind that a bit. That sounds like a plan to me. This is gonna fill it nicely. We've got a lot of grow bags here that we'll use for the extra humus that we have. Okay, so we got 4 bags there. I'm gonna do a little drop of topsoil on the top of it, and then I'm gonna mix it in. That was inside here. Come take a look down here. And it just breaks real easy. So it's very broken down. A little hard inside there, but not bad at all. That's the kind of stuff that you want in your garden. So it can create, over time, good bacteria, nutrients, things that will help all your plants grow. Mixing up a little bit of the compost, manure, and mixture of topsoil into this. It's just going to be diluted a lot. From underneath it, you know. We definitely can do another 4 bags and a topsoil on top of this as well to get it up even higher. I'm not going to worry about flattening it right now. Now, when we plant, we're certainly going to be putting some additions into each of the holes where we're planting so that we're adding the proper fertilization, nutrients that's needed to get the plant off to a good start. We're also going to, depending on what we put in these beds and each bed, try to get the pH level exactly where it needs to be for each individual type of plant. Let's mix it up. I think this bed will only get better as the years go by and healthier. We considered adding some cocoa coir into this just to assist in any
Heaviness, any weight.
yeah, just to lighten it up some, right?
Yes.
It's time for a new blade. The size of these beds are going to be nice. I can just tell as I'm leaning over to work in the soil how it's going to be nice to be able to walk all the way around this bed and deal with the plants, harvest tomatoes or whatever we put in here. All right, I'm going to throw a topsoil in there and then we'll mix it up. And we'll get these beds right where we want them. And in just a second, we'll show you these beds all complete. All right, it's done. These look great. I want to go over the cost with you. Now, as we talked about at the beginning of this video, the reason we did things the way we did them was because I wanted to attempt to save money and use things that we already have, and of course buy things that were cheaper than the alternative. So the alternative could have been that we purchased the components to put together our own raised garden bed soil, which would have included maybe vermiculite and perlite, compost, different components, maybe peat moss or cocoa coir, items that we would have mixed together, some manure potentially that was composted, of course, and got a good, nice, robust mixture for this bed. Now that's what we do in the small grow bags and some of the other pots and smaller beds. This one is, it's kind of, the goal was to create its own little ecosystem here, because it's a large scale bed, again 8x4 and 2 feet tall. As you know, we filled half of that space up with logs, and then we were able to buy inexpensive items like the compost and manure, the topsoil, and then the humus compost. Those were not that expensive. So between the two beds, the total investment that we have for the soil, all those items that I just mentioned, obviously not counting the logs, those were free, was approximately, we had leftover, so I'm only going to count what we put in the beds, $210 plus tax. I did receive a 10% discount for being a veteran, and so you know, add 10% to that, but not bad. The alternative would have been that we would have spent 3 to 4 times that much had we bought raised garden bed soils, or soils that had all those components mixed together. Now we are missing components. We don't have cocoa coir, we don't have peat moss in here, we don't have vermiculite or perlite. Those could have been added, and I recommend considering that. We're going to find out how these garden beds do. Man, do you hear the cicadas? They're really out now, and for a while I was thinking they weren't coming, but yeah, they're here. But yeah, this stuff, we could have added the other items, but we're going to find out how it does. So if you're interested, we will post videos when we plant in these beds, and Mrs. Lovely is considering possibility of doing some seed in this bed, starting from some seed like squash or zucchini, corn, different items that we might just start outside, possibly okra, different things. Or we may end up going with tomatoes, peppers, you know, the traditional items in these beds, but we'll find out. You'll see that. But yeah, if you want to see how this performs the way we did it, and you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, the real ugly. By the way, we got a 5-gallon bucket of manure. I mean, clobs of manure out of those bags that we did use. So, you know, not too great, but it could have been worse, I suppose. The last few bags that we did use, and we ended up, I guess maybe right off camera, putting a little bit mixture into the top area of each one of these, the compost and manure. Just a little bit, but those bags didn't seem to have anything nearly as bad as those other bags did. But yeah, follow along. You could subscribe to the channel if you'd like to, and that way, and maybe you hit that notification bell and it'll let you know when other videos come on, and you'll be able to see when we post what we're going to plant in here, and more importantly, how does it do throughout the season and by the end of the summer. What kind of production do we get out of it? Is there going to be a good harvest or not? I would love your comments. I know that we probably did some things not traditionally well done, so I would love some good feedback, constructive criticism, whatever you got. But until next time, we hope that you'll stay with us. Give us a like if you got something out of the video, and hopefully we'll see you here at the lovely place, or down at the lovely place, creating our homestead very soon. So God bless, take care, we'll see you.